Man, I can't believe it's been a whole year since the last retrospective. Do you guys get it? Because it's like the new year. Okay, bad joke aside, we're on to season 4 now. Looking back, I couldn't tell you much about this season except I hate it. I don't remember many episodes except for the opener, Vat of Acid, and sadly, the dragon one. I really hate the dragon one. This isn't the best sign of what's coming, because for me, not remembering much of something most likely means I thought it was boring. I hope this isn't the case, otherwise this is going to be one boring ass video to make. Also, the thing I hate the most about media I consume is it being boring. I'd rather something be outright bad but entertaining, since at least I'm not just sitting there thinking about doing anything else. This season and the 5th season are the only 2 seasons I haven't rewatched, so maybe that's the reason I can't remember much. I really hope that's the case. Anyways, let's get into it with the season premiere. Episode 1 is Edge of Morty, Rick Die, Rick Pete. Great title. Love that movie. And it's a very fitting name for the episode. This episode starts off with the family eating breakfast like a lot of other episodes do. Then Rick attempts to whisk Morty away for another adventure, but before they can get anywhere, something unimaginable happens. Beth makes Rick ask for Morty's consent to go on an adventure. What the hell? So Rick begrudgingly asks nicely, or as nicely as Rick's capable of. Then they go off to a planet to get death crystals. These crystals show you your future death, which changes all the time due to your actions. Morty gets a hold of one and sees a future where he dies at an old age, with Jessica watching over him saying she loves him. Morty chases this reality the crystal shows, which leads to Rick dying. Rick has a protocol for when he dies where a hologram will spawn and tell Morty how to clone him, but the crystal shows a different outcome than what Morty wants, so he goes home without cloning Rick. He lives his life, doing anything to get his death with Jessica when he accidentally provokes a bully, and now he's most likely going to be killed by him. And my god, some of these deaths are brutal, like a spike through the mouth or impaled by a shower head. God damn, this kid has issues. Morty suits up with weapons and defeats the bully and his 2 friends, one of them voiced by John DiMaggio, so that gives this episode extra points. Then the police come to arrest Morty, and Morty takes them out. Then the army gets involved, and Morty lets them arrest him. Then what was the point of killing all the cops, you freak? At this point, Morty isn't even living anymore, he's just doing as the crystal asks, like a zombie. At his court case, Morty says the words of the judge's dead husband, so she lets him go. Then Jessica asks if he wants to go skinny dipping, and Morty declines. Okay, Morty, what are you doing? I feel like at this point, Morty would have just said fuck it and go with her. It would make sense due to him being a 14-year-old boy. I guess the death crystal is kind of an allegory for drugs, but still. Then he starts to hibernate by turning into a gross venom tree.
It would be so awesome. It would be so cool.
And the animation is actually amazing here. The series has definitely come a long way from season 1 animation-wise. Before we finish the A plot, let's talk about the B plot. Since Rick died and destroyed Operation Phoenix, his clone's in big trouble in Little Sanchez. Nice callback. He gets transferred to another Rick's clone in another dimension. It turns out that this dimension is fascist, and Rick eventually dies. The next couple of dimensions are fascist, but eventually, he wakes up in a Wasp dimension, which they are surprisingly not fascist. Wasp Rick helps Rick get back to his dimension, and Hologram Rick tells them what's going on with Morty. Rick and Wasp Rick free Morty and take the crystal away from him, but then Hologram Rick becomes a kaiju and is defeated by Wasp Rick. The episode ends with Beth and Jerry berating Rick about allowing Morty to do all that stuff, but Morty takes the blame and tells them to get off Rick's back. Nice moment. And the episode closes with another rambling scene, like the season 1 and 3 premiere, but this time Morty is also rambling. Then Summer comes in and fuck. Summer, I defended you last season and now you have to make an incest joke? First episode and they're already making these jokes. But at least Morty and Rick yell at her. So this episode wasn't that bad. The death crystal idea is fun, but once Morty starts to attack the bullies and becomes all-powerful, I lost interest. There's really no stakes since you know Morty can't die. There is a saving grace for the A-plot, and that's Hologram Rick. He's hilarious, constantly getting offended by solid matter since he's a hologram. It's a great bit. I do think the post-credit scene is really funny, revealing that Jessica just wanted to have a job, where she would comfort old dying people saying that she loved them. Haha, get fucked, Morty. The B-plot was actually really funny. The gag where Rick always wakes up in a fascist dimension is hilarious, and they don't overplay it. They do the rule of 3, let's go baby! That's good comedy writing. Rick learning empathy from wasps is also hilarious, since wasps are one of the worst creatures known to man. Just assholes to be assholes. And Rick learning how to show empathy from them is actually genius, while at the same time they are eating goldenfold caterpillar alive, which is quite humorous. The only thing I don't like about this plot is that it sets the precedent that Rick is actually never in danger, since no matter what happens, he can always just go to another dimension and get a clone. It takes me out of most episodes in the future where Rick is about to die or in danger, which sucks. But hey, Jerry says anime and it's kinda hilarious.
I don't want to see any more anime stuff.
In terms of the ranking, this episode is going below Morty's Mind Blowers, but above Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate. Episode 2 is The Old Man and the Seat. I remember people saying this episode is one of the best of the season, but when I first watched it, I thought it was only okay. But let's see if my opinion changed. This episode starts off with the family eating breakfast, damn, 2 times in a row. Then Rick goes to take a shit. He has created a bathroom on a remote planet, and I just have to say, the colors on this planet are so beautiful. I would love to shit here. But then Rick finds out that someone else had been there and pooped, so he goes to try and find the culprit. He finds a man named Tony, whose wife died a while ago, so he really doesn't care when Rick says he's gonna kill him. Rick doesn't assassinate Tony and tells Tony not to go back to the toilet planet, but Tony apparently has a death wish, since he shows up again. Rick is pissed, so he enlarges himself and sits on Tony. That has to be someone's fetish. This seemingly kills Tony, sending him to heaven. Tony realizes it's just a simulation and tries to off himself, which Rick saves him. Rick put him in this goop that shows you your deepest fantasy, and apparently Tony's deepest fantasy is heaven with a bunch of toilets and his wife.
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity.
Tony's not the only one Rick has done this to. There is a room full of people. After this, Tony calls Rick his friend and Rick denies it. Rick comes up with a plan to get back at Tony for being annoying. Rick goes to Tony's work to give him laxatives when the front desk lady tells Rick that Tony died space skiing because he wanted to try and get out there and live his life. Then Rick goes back to the toilet and sits down. Rick's plan is revealed with a bunch of Ricks applauding him and saying good job and how he's the king of shit. Damn. The other episode follows Rick's intern trying to get someone to develop an app, but Rick says no one should. So of course Jerry develops an app with him. Quick question, why does Rick need an intern, especially if he's dangerous? And he leaves him in the same home as Jerry. I don't think Rick's the smartest man in the universe anymore, because that's just plain old stupid. Anyways, the app is a dating app that matches you with your soulmate, but it also will match you with someone else every now and then, creating chaos on Earth. Jerry and Morty make the intern take them to the mothership so they can take the app down. I love the bit where Jerry and Morty are holding the intern hostage, and no one has a gun, so Morty just says he'll punch anyone in his way, so they do what he wants. Hilarious. Morty and Jerry are taken to the leader and he reveals his evil plan. The app is just a distraction and they are going to swoop in and steal the Earth's water supply. Okay, I guess that's a plan. I don't know why they can't just do that without the app. Morty and Jerry are captured and about to be executed by the intern when he says he's in between relationships. Jerry scans the intern's face with the app and shows he has no one, and then Jerry does the same thing, showing the same result. The intern frees them and puts an ad wall on the app, making everyone delete it. There's another subplot following Summer finding more and more soulmates and Beth trying to stop her. This episode is weird to me. Having Rick quote unquote become friends with Tony is a neat plot, especially since it shows that Rick has somewhat of a heart, but is too stubborn to show it to most people. The scene where it reveals that Rick put a bunch of people in that goop so he wouldn't have to kill them, because he somewhat liked them, is great, but I just think it took too long to get to Tony, and we get very little time with him. Only 3 scenes before his inevitable demise. They definitely could have cut out a bit of Rick finding Tony, and spent more time making you believe that Rick likes Tony deep down. Other than that, it was a good plot, with a great ending. I love Rick just sitting there, defeated, as all the hologram Ricks are calling him the king of shit. He pushes people away and all he gets out of it is pain, instead of opening up and having a good time. The app plot is a lot more fun than I remembered. Okay, part of it is. I liked everything to do with Jerry, Morty, and the intern. Their stuff was definitely the funniest part of the episode.
Got a date? We're dumping a dating app. Glue-doo-doo.
Was that ever his thing?
And this is the first Jerry and Morty solo adventure since season 1, so that's cool. But the Summer and Beth plot is very mid. At first it's fun, with Summer running off with some guy, but then she keeps running off with other people, which they do basically the same joke with. Also, I hate this line.
Not how I did it.
Yeah, where's your daughter?
You're right. She joined ISIS.
They could have had a fun little joke with his daughter and him not talking anymore and play it seriously, but no, they had to go with ISIS for the shock value. In terms of the ranking, this episode is going below Lawnmower Dog, but above Autoerotic Assimilation. Before we get into the next episode, I'd like to say thank you guys for watching this video. It means a lot to me, and if you like it, please like and subscribe. Also, if you have any recommendations for other shows for me to cover, go ahead and comment them down in the comments. Okay, back to the retrospective. Episode 3 is One Crew over the Crew-Coo's Morty. This episode is going to be a nightmare to explain. This episode starts off with Rick and Morty going to rob a temple, but then it's revealed that Rick's enemy, Miles Knightley, who loves to heist, stole the treasure, so Rick and Morty go to HeistCon to steal it. Rick hates heist, but is forced to put a crew together to get into HeistCon, where they find Miles Knightley. Then he challenges Rick to a heist-off, which Rick agrees to, but it turns out that Miles Knightley already did the heist. But then it turns out Rick made a heist robot, which then got them the treasure by controlling Rick's old crew. Okay, fuck this. This is only the first 5 minutes, and there are so many more twists and turns, and I don't want this part to be 20 minutes long. Rick makes a heist robot that starts doing heists that eventually heists the Earth, and Rick stops it after like a million twists and turns. But the last twist is Rick planned everything that happened in this episode so Morty would lose interest in the heist movie he was writing. So, this episode was fine. There were a lot of funny gags. I really like how everyone Rick recruits says, "You son of a bitch." They also bring back PB, which is fun. See, this is fine. Don't make a whole episode about him. He's fun in little chunks. I'll talk more about that in my season 7 video though. They also have Elon Musk as a guest star playing Elon Tusk. Yay, he's a great addition to this episode. But the twist is, he's not. He's unfunny, especially the gag of him being Elon Tusk. Like, yippee, you made a preschool level pun, good job. Rick plays Minecraft and that's great continuity. I really love how Rick defeats Heistatron with them arguing about how they programmed each other to say that, and then 2 hours later, Rick says it one last time and...
How did you think that? And I programmed you to believe that. Goodbye.
This episode is fine. I just got frustrated trying to explain it, and how they already made a better episode with many twists with M. Night Shyamalan aliens. So, let's move on. In terms of the ranking, this episode is going below Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate, but above the Rick, Chury, and Morty date. Episode 4 is Claw and Hoarder, Special Rickdom's Morty. Well, this has always been one of my least favorite episodes of the show, but has my opinion changed? No. Sorry, I didn't want to do the whole let's find out bit. This episode is that bad. It starts off with Rick and Morty getting done with an adventure. Rick has to get Morty a dragon since Rick promised Morty one for coming on the adventure. So Rick gives Morty one named Baltherma, and the dragon doesn't like Morty, which makes sense because he's basically Morty's slave. Rick thinks Baltherma is lame until he goes down to slay him for ruining his TV watching. But then they start to hang out and they have a lot in common. And this leads to the duo... soul bonding. This is fucking gross. Soul bonding is basically sex, and especially what happens later in the episode, it's disgusting.
Now, of course, I may be saying this because of that virgin blood within me.
I think it would have been fine if they didn't moan and say how great it is while Rick's grandkids are watching. The wizard that gave them the dragon comes back and takes Baltherma back to get hanged for being a slut. Since Rick and him are soul bonded now, Rick can feel his pain. Rick, Morty, and Summer go to the magic dimension where Rick can't use science to get out of situations. That's actually a cool idea. But then he just makes a magic gun right away that can do anything. Great. They go and find Baltherma and escape to a cave, but it turns out this cave is the Slut Cave, and it's where all the slut dragons go to hide from the wizard. The inhabitants explain that they can't unsoul bond without killing the wizard, so they're screwed. Then the elder slut dragon comes out of his goon cave to tell them that if they have a giant soul orgy, they can make a big soul dragon to go defeat the wizard. What the actual fuck is that sentence? I hate that I had to read that. I hate that it was actually something that happened in this episode. Anyways, they all have a soul orgy, including Summer, Morty, and Rick, who are all moaning, and it's so fucking gross. Ah!
Stop it. Get some help.
They kill the wizard and go home, where Baltherma wants to soul bond some more with Morty, with a lot of unfunny jokes, and it just keeps going on. Then there's the other plot. It's actually really enjoyable. Jerry stumbles upon a talking cat, and the cat says don't ask any questions and just have fun. Jerry does this and they go to Florida where they have a lot of fun. But then the cat blames Jerry for shitting in the sand. And since Floridians are more stupid than the normal human, everyone hates on Jerry. Eventually the cat gets kicked off a yacht for asking too many questions. Huh, ironic. He gets back to land with Jerry and Jerry calls Rick to come pick them up. Rick does a brain scan of the cat to see why he can talk and...
What in the... Do not...
But I've got nowhere to go!
Get out! Get out!
Jerry says that someone has to remember this, and Rick erases Jerry's mind saying someone will. Raw as fuck. So, this episode is bad. The A-plot is extremely uncomfortable. Like, why did they have to make a dragon sex episode? What's the point? This is a D&D parody, and there's so much they could do with this concept in the Rick and Morty world. It could have been a great episode about Morty, Summer, and Rick having to play by the rules of magic, and Rick learning slowly how to use magic while Morty is better at it than him. That could have been a great conflict for Rick and Morty, but no. They had to go with the dragon sex. It's extremely unfunny, and I just can't. Fuck Balthamar, fuck Rick, fuck Summer, I hate it. The worst part is the B-plot is actually fun, but it's only 4 minutes and the rest is about the Dragooners and their sexcapades. Rick also says this.
First off, I always slay it, queen.
And Summer says this.
Or I will tweet and you will be cancelled.
Why is it so bad? And that title, why is it referencing Law and Order? And you can't just put Morty in for unit. That's not a pun. It's just replacing a word. Oh god, I just realized I'm sounding like the Squidward's house guy.
Security system takes control of Squidward's house for everything. Yeah! Fuck this episode!
Okay, the cat plot. The ending is actually amazing, with Rick erasing Jerry's memory. It's really wholesome and shows that Rick somewhat likes Jerry. Great character moment. Also, Jerry's just really funny in this episode. I don't think I've said this before, but Chris Parnell has perfect delivery and his voice for Jerry is amazing. In terms of the ranking, this episode is going in last place. At least with Pickle Rick, it just kind of made me feel nothing. This one ticks me off. Episode 5 is Rattle Star Rick Lactica. This episode starts off with Rick and Morty driving in space when the ship gets a flat tire. Rick tells Morty to stay in the ship, but Morty doesn't and gets bitten by a space snake. You know, this has the beginnings of a great episode. I love when episodes follow Rick telling Morty that something is stupid and he shouldn't do it. Then Morty does it anyways and it backfires for him like Rick Potion number 9 and Look Who's Purging Now. Rick goes to the snake planet to make a cure for Morty and finds out that the snakes are divided because of racism. And the dead space snake was a beacon of hope for all. Then why the hell did it just go up and bite Morty? He wasn't doing anything to it. Fucking dumbass.
Dumbass material all the way.
Morty feels really bad about this, so he buys a snake and makes it look like the one that Rick killed and delivers it back to the snake world. This inadvertently causes the snakes to develop time travel and send hundreds of snakes back in time to try and protect or kill Morty. Rick and Morty go back to the planet to solve this problem, and Rick doesn't want to create time travel right now, so he makes his future self do it. And they come in all pissed off with snake costumes. And Morty also has a black eye. Then Rick and Morty go back to the Snake 80s and gives them the solution to time travel so Rick and Morty will be out of the story. But that just causes more snakes to come and attack them, which gets the attention of the 4th Dimension police. I like them bringing these guys back from a wrinkle in time. And I love that they got Keegan-Michael Key back, but no Jordan Peele. He was probably too busy making Us. The 4th Dimension police go back in time and beat up a caveman snake, solving the problem. The other plot follows Jerry setting up Christmas lights. Beth doesn't trust Jerry to do it without harming himself, so Rick makes his body lighter than air so he can float, but his shoes heavier so he doesn't float off. So of course Jerry loses a shoe and floats off. Rick calls him, saying that he won't tell Beth about him nearly killing himself, but Jerry's not having it and says he'll do it himself. Hell yeah, Jerry. The days of you being a pushover are over. Jerry eventually makes it back to the ground and holds a boulder so he doesn't float off. He goes into a bar with the boulder, then the funniest scene in the episode plays out, with all the tenants being pissed because he's holding a boulder. They throw him out and off Jerry goes floating again. He clings onto a plane and gets to safety after his power ran out. This episode has the foundation of a good episode, but sadly this is one of the most forgettable episodes in the entire show. I generally don't find it funny when shows create a new civilization of creatures and make it just like humanity. Like here, the snakes act the same as humans, but they hiss instead. Oh look, it's Snake Hitler! That's so funny, isn't it, guys? I just don't find that very funny. Then it turns into a lame Terminator parody, which is just bad. And how the plot is solved with the fourth dimensional cops is cool, except why did Rick and Morty make them create time travel sooner? The same outcome would have happened anyways, and we could have focused more on the better plot. It's just kind of a cop-out. Do you guys get it? Cop-out? Fourth dimension cop? It's a pun, you get it? Ah! I'm actually going crazy recording these. I do like Rick and Morty from the future coming back and being dicks, and then it shows Rick and Morty being done with the adventure, and future Rick and Morty come back, and make them do the same thing they did. Then it's revealed why Morty has a black eye is because Rick decked him for not staying in the car. Quite comical. The Jerry plot is really fun. I just love his stupid floaty escapades. And there are some really funny moments.
Put it down. If I put it down, I'm going to float. And frankly, your bar has a lot of ceiling fans.
I also love how it ends with Jerry not getting any help and him doing it all on his own. Great character development. The last thing I want to say is, why is Nancy hanging out with Summer? Run, Nancy. You deserve better. In terms of the ranking, this episode is going below Raising Gazorbasaur, but above the ABCs of Beth. Episode 6 is Never Ricking Morty. This episode, like Morty's mind blowers of last season, is the replacement for interdimensional cable. It's basically an excuse for the writers to write a bunch of short, funny gags. Rick and Morty are trapped on a train, and while trying to get to the front of it to try and escape, there are gags ahoy. Once they get to the front of the train, they meet the Story Lord, played by the great Paul Giamatti.
You are and always have been penis cancer in human form.
Story Lord beats the absolute shit out of them. Then he reveals his evil plan, which is to break through the fifth wall, whatever that means. And to do so, he straps Morty and Rick to something to try and do that somehow. I don't really know. Then a bunch of gags start playing, showing us the potential of Rick and Morty as a series, like Snuffles coming back and having a war with cats. Or Evil Morty having a big army of Ricks, Meeseeks, and Gazorpians for some reason. It seems hopeless for Rick and Morty, but Rick does one thing that no one would ever expect him to do. He starts praying. Story Lord is pissed, and then Jesus comes, which distracts him, allowing Rick to trap Story Lord in that reality. But with one final twist, it turns out this was a toy train that the real Morty bought for Rick as a present. This is a strange episode, very out there. They use story tropes and meld them into this fun train setting, and it works pretty well. I especially like the Bechdel test gag with Morty's awful story, and the gag where Rick straps a device to turn off Morty's air supply in a minute since it would be too easy for them to advance otherwise. This episode is pretty funny. I especially get a kick out of the whole Jesus solution. It's actually genius. Then Rick's rambling about loving capitalism is so weird and random, but I love it.
Bought something. What? You bought something. With money. You didn't ask questions or raise ethical complaints. You just looked straight into the bleeding jaws of capitalism and said, "Yes, Daddy, please. I only wish you could have bought more. I love buying things so much, Morty."
I do have one complaint. Morty says he's not a writer, but 3 episodes ago, we see him writing a script for a heist movie. Wow. That was actually just a test for you guys if you just blindly believed me, because the writer Morty isn't actually this Morty. Go ahead and put in the comments down below if you believe me or not. Man, that was a 10 out of 10 bit. The last thing I'll talk about is how this episode has a funny meta plot, but also after this, the show's meta jokes get kind of annoying. Hell, even before this episode, I was tired of characters just talking about how they're in a show, but at least here it's plot relevant. But they don't stop here, and it gets really annoying. In terms of the ranking, this is going below Lawnmower Dog, but above The Old Man and The Seat. Episode 7 is Pro Mortius. This episode starts off with Rick and Morty walking around some alien planet with these facehuggers on. You guessed it, their faces. Then Morty's facehugger accidentally gets stuck on a rock, allowing Morty to gain consciousness and free the duo. We're told that Rick and Morty went on an adventure to this planet and they looked at wet eggs, which got them attacked by facehuggers. Yeah, that'll do it. Rick and Morty put the dead facehuggers back on their face to sneak around and find a way home. It turns out that Morty was really popular in this society, and Rick was a hated YouTuber. They end up at Morty's lab, where the aliens created a missile to spread amongst the galaxy using Rick's ship as a power source. Rick and Morty are discovered to be imposters. Rick and Morty get to the ship and dip out. While escaping, they are destroying everyone and everything and enjoying it because they believe these aliens are evil. I really like the conversation that Rick and Morty have where Rick admits that he needs to loosen up and be more open to Morty. That's sweet. I mean, he doesn't keep his word, so that kind of sucks. Then they fly by 2 towers because it would be tasteless to destroy those. Then they do a Pearl Harbor. This is hilarious, but I wish in the next scene they didn't bring it up. They talk about it at the dinner table, which makes it way less funny. It would have been better if they left it as a one-off joke instead of dragging it out. This is a problem with a lot of jokes in this season. So the B plot is Jerry has become a beekeeper.
And the mystery is...
That's the end of that plot. Actually, no, we do see him beekeeping during the post-credit scene, and Summer's friend wants to bang him. I wish we got more of the Jerry beekeeping subplot. At the dinner table, Rick and Morty realize they left Summer on the planet, so they go back to get her. When they find her, she's doing just fine. It seems like she's the queen of the civilization, and she orders the guards to arrest Rick and Morty. Later, she tells them what happened. When they got there, Summer didn't get infected because she's a toothpick girl now, making it so the facehuggers can't attach to her face. But then a bunch of infected aliens come and tell them to take the toothpick out of her mouth. In this civilization, the aliens used to only live for half an hour, then lay an egg and die. I don't know how there are so many of them on this planet then, if they keep dying, since the facehuggers need a host, and I doubt that many aliens crash land here. Summer tells them not to do that, and they stop. Truly wise words. She becomes the queen, and the infected Morty is her right-hand man, and the infected Rick is bitter because she took him away from him. Then Summer tells the facehugger to get off of Morty, leading to the infected Morty to go to the infected Rick. Classic Rick and Morty time, the infected Rick and Morty make out because they are in love with each other. I'm sorry, who thinks this shit is funny? Incest isn't funny. I know comedy is subjective, but I'm right. I don't care. It might work for a one-off joke, but holy crap, they made 3 jokes this season already. Please stop. The infected Rick and Morty go to get eggs to start a family, and that's when Morty and Rick gain back control. Back in the present, Summer sentences Rick and Morty to death by sitting in their car, and she will join them to make sure they die. The aliens catch on to her plan, and Rick uses Morty's terrible harmonica playing to make them all lay eggs. Don't ask. They escape back to Earth, where Rick and Morty feel like they're going to lay eggs, and they tell Beth goodbye, but then they just shit all over the floor. Well, this was an episode. It's not bad, but like a lot of other episodes this season, this episode was pretty mediocre. There are some funny bits in here. Above all of them, I really like Rick and Morty just shitting on the floor. It's so stupid, but it works. I like the designs of the facehuggers. I really like the Glory to Glorzo song they made for this episode. I'm actually struggling to talk about this episode. There's not much to say about it. This episode definitely needed a B plot, and they had a golden one with Jerry being a beekeeper. I'm not even joking around, I think that plot would have slapped. In terms of the ranking, this episode is going below Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate, but above One Crew over the Crew-Coo's Morty. Also, I'm going to move Something Wicked This Way Comes and Anatomy Park up a couple spots in the ranking because I realized they shouldn't be as low as they were. So stick around until the end of the video to see where they rank now. Episode 8 is the Vat of Acid episode. Holy shit, finally, a great episode. This season has been mostly mediocre, but this episode is great. This episode starts off with Rick and Morty going to do a deal with mob-looking guys who double-cross Rick. So Rick makes Morty jump into a vat of fake acid. This makes the mob guys stay there, trying to process what just happened, and contemplating the meaning of life. Eventually Morty gets sick of waiting and kills them. When Rick and Morty get back at the house, they have a huge argument about how stupid the vat idea was, and that Rick never lets Morty do his ideas. Rick brings up the dragon, and I have to side with Rick on this one. That was stupid. Morty wants Rick to make a video game save point device, so he can press it and save where he's at in time, and then press it again later to go back to that point in time. Rick makes it because he's pissed off. Then he tells Morty he can explain the device or Morty can go have fun. Morty chooses the latter and off he goes. A montage plays of Morty using the device. He uses it for stuff like failing to jump over a manhole, going into the ladies' locker room, and other stuff. But eventually Morty meets a girl and they start dating. They fall in love. They have a falling out. Then they reconcile when Morty buys them tickets to go on a vacation. While on the plane, it crashes and they are stranded on a snowy mountain. Morty then goes to try and find the remote to go back in time. He finds it, but then he also finds his phone and calls 911, not wanting to go back to the time before he met his girlfriend. They are saved and everything is good, until Jerry finds the device, thinking it's a TV remote. He uses it, sending Morty back to when he first met the girl. But Morty messes that up and gets pepper sprayed by her, and Morty accidentally saves after he gets pepper sprayed, so it's useless. I'm not doing this episode justice. The montage has no dialogue and it's set to a great score. This scene is actually beautiful. Then Morty goes back to Rick and tells him that he learned a lesson. And the lesson is, what's the point of having no consequences? That's what makes you grow as a person. I love how Morty actually matured after the sequence. But then Rick says there were consequences to Morty's actions. Rick doesn't like time travel, so every time Morty presses the button, he just jumps to another dimension, where that dimension's Morty is killed. Morty is obviously freaked out, and Rick tells him there's one way to save all the Mortys that he's massacred. and that's to make all his actions merge into one reality, so Morty does it. Then the SWAT team comes and Morty asks how is he supposed to get out of this, and there it is. Like an angel sitting in the front yard, the Vat of Acid. Holy fuck, it's so fucking good. Morty goes into the Vat of Acid and everyone leaves due to him supposedly dying. Then Rick and Morty go back to their dimension because Rick wasn't going to waste a good dimension on teaching Morty a lesson. I don't know if it's because this season has been really mediocre, but I love this episode. This episode won an Emmy and it's deserved. Rick loving the Vat of Acid plan, even though it's stupid, is hilarious. It reminds me of his unconditional love of the Pirates of the Pancreas in Anatomy Park. The plot is amazing, especially the montage showing the ups and downs of a relationship just to rip everything away from Morty in the end. It actually got me invested in the relationship. Then to rub salt in the wound with the discovery that he's killed so many Mortys. My man went through a lot this episode, and all of this just so Rick could hear Morty say that the Vat of Acid idea was a good idea. So devious, Rick, I love it. This episode is also really funny, especially the first scene with the guys questioning the Vat of Acid. It's just so good. The montage reminds me a lot of the montage in Up, which isn't a complaint, I love that movie. In terms of the ranking, this episode is going below Rick Potion number 9, but above M. Night Shyamalan Aliens. Episode 9 is Child Rick of Mor. The family is going camping when we find out Rick fucked a planet and got her pregnant. Yep, that's actually the plot. They go to her since Beth doesn't want Rick abandoning any more children. She gives birth to many tiny creatures and Rick and Beth help them make a civilization. Then a god comes and claims they're his children, but Rick's not having it and goes to beat him up. Jerry's plot is about him feeling unimportant and no one wants to go camping with him, so he starts a camping cult with some of Rick's kids. When the god guy comes, he gives Jerry powers, and he and Beth fight. Morty and Summer want to get high and play video games, but they can't. They find a spaceship, and Summer gets high off some mysterious bong, and Morty thinks he can control the spaceship like a video game. They're wrong and crash into the god guy's head, killing him, saving Rick. The planet's mad now, and the family leaves. God, just another nothing episode. It's a cool premise, but I don't know. It feels really bland. I like Rick and Beth bonding. I don't like how Beth is letting Rick talk to Jerry like that, especially after last season's finale. It feels like the family has once again regressed to hating Jerry, which is sad to see. I thought they were past that. All the plots are kinda boring, and I only laughed a handful of times. And to add more wood to the fire of disappointment, Rick brings up incest porn.
Okay, the therapists are getting bored. We need to increase their supply of incest porn.
20% wasn't enough?
I can't anymore. This episode feels like the characters are devolving. Morty just wants to play video games, which we know he likes, but that's all he wants to do? Summer just wants to party and do drugs. Beth just wants Rick's approval, which I thought she was over that. And Rick actually learns how to father children. That's a good arc. Jerry's development is also good, making him show initiative. Too bad his plotline's boring. How many times are we gonna have Beth and Jerry fight before they start to like each other? They should have stayed divorced. This episode is fine, I guess. But I would legitimately like to watch a terrible episode like the ABCs of Beth instead of watching this mediocre episode again. In terms of the ranking, this episode's going below Raising Gazorpasaur, but above Rattlestar Rick Lactica. And finally, the finale of Season 4, Star Mort, Return of the Jerry. This episode starts off with Summer and Morty fighting over an invisibility belt, Jerry and Beth going to therapy, and the other Beth, who is maybe a clone, maybe not, from space coming down to kill Rick, because she thinks he put a bomb in her neck. Rick tells her that she's the real one, and he put the device in both of the Beths. They go out for drinks. Then the new and improved Galactic Federation invades Earth to get Space Beth because she is one of the most wanted criminals out there. Tammy, Bird Person's wife, who was revealed to be a part of the Galactic Federation in the Wedding Squanchers, finds Beth and Jerry at therapy. Rick comes in and takes her down and grabs Jerry and Beth. They escape, but then Space Beth shoots them down and holds Beth hostage. Then Tammy comes back and takes both of them captive on a ship for interrogation. Morty and Summer come to the rescue after they learn to work together. And trust me, they let you know.
And Summer, we work together. That's our arc.
We went from siblings to invisible to working together.
Dream Team rides again.
Oh yeah, we're like Luke and Leia.
Working together is our belt.
That's our arc. Let's do it.
I get it.
They kill Tammy and go up to the ship to save the Beths. Morty and Summer destroy the big laser destroying Earth with Wrangler jeans because the ship is sponsored by them, so they can't get destroyed. That's hilarious. Rick goes into a room and finds Bird Person, now known as Phoenix Person, and they fight. Rick is defeated, then Space Beth and Beth come in after escaping and get their asses kicked. Jerry comes to the rescue and uses Tammy as a puppet to calm Phoenix Person down, which fails. but then they just turn Phoenix Person off. This episode ends with it revealing that Rick erased his memory of who is the real Beth, and asks if anyone wants to see, but no one does. He watches it by himself, and it's revealed that Beth asked him to pick, which is a dick move by the way, and he picks randomly so we don't know who the real clone is. Then it ends with Rick feeling sad that he's a bad father. I don't know if I'm just glad to be done or what, but I really like this episode. Everyone in the family gets a moment to shine, and I especially like Jerry's plot about wanting to use puppets and everyone shuts him down. Then he saves them with puppets. That's a great arc. Phoenix Person is fine. It could have had an emotional impact with Rick seeing his best friend mutilated and brought back to life as a husk of his former self, but Rick doesn't really take it seriously. Tammy's death is satisfying. This episode is funny.
Drop your guns, except for Jerry. Fucking classic.
Some jokes do go on for a while, which I don't like. Rick feeling bad about being a bad father is kind of lame because he's learned this so many times. I love how Rick uses his portal gun in the fight with Phoenix Person even though it was just once. I'll explain what I wish they did with Rick in the conclusion, so more on that in a bit. I love how this actually feels like a finale, unlike last season's. Still doesn't come close to the first 2 seasons finales, but that's fine. In terms of the ranking, this episode is going below the pilot, but above Rick's minutes. So we finally made it. The end of season 4. Now to answer the question, is season 4 good? No, it wasn't. But it also wasn't bad. I only disliked 2 episodes from this season, which is less episodes than season 3. But the thing is, 4 of this season's episodes I would consider mediocre, 1 was okay, 2 were good, and 1 was great. Over half the season was a letdown. Unlike last season, where I had my favorite episode in the entire series and a couple of great episodes. This season's highest ranked episode just nearly cracked the top 10. Most of these episodes are near the bottom of the list, which is disappointing. Most of the time during the season, I was bored. It was also less funny than season 3, which was already less funny than seasons 1 and 2. I found them dragging jokes out quite a bit, and it would have been more funny if they would have just moved on instead of rambling on about it. This is most likely due to the improv, which was great in the first 3 seasons, but here a lot of the time, they make a joke, then they talk about it for so much longer, rendering it unfunny. A great example of this is in Mortius with the Pearl Harbor joke. There's also an increase in incest jokes, and you know how I feel about those. The meta jokes have run their course and have become unfunny. They just need to take a break and not do as many. It's not all doom and gloom. The animation quality has increased drastically. From here on out, you know when you watch Rick and Morty, you're going to see some beautiful animation. For a Western adult cartoon at least. I also really like Jerry this season. His side plots are some of my favorite moments from this season, like him being floaty and his adventures with the talking cat. He's just hilarious. Now let's talk about Rick. I feel like he's learned he's a dick so many times, and it feels like he's going to change, especially after this season's finale, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't. I'm just sick of the same thing being done with his character. I want something new. And he's now just so overpowered. He's basically immortal, and it gets rid of all the tension in episodes. What I wish they would have done with him, instead of spawning mini gadgets from his lab coat, I wish he would just use his portal gun to fight. It would be fun, and there's so much that can be done in fights with it, and this would alleviate the problem of Rick being overpowered, since he's always had the portal gun, and it can be easily destroyed. Summer and Beth are basically the same. I do like the introduction of Space Beth. Whenever they do a plot with Space Beth, it makes regular Beth more interesting. Morty has become less jaded and cynical compared to last season, and it's for the better. This season just makes me sad because I know how good this series can be, but it's just so mediocre. I'm not ready for season 5 because I know it's worse than this season. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm done talking about season 4. Let's get into the ranking. In 41st place is Claw and Hoarder, Special Rictums Morty. In 40th place is Pickle Rick. In 39th place is Vindicators 3, The Return of World Ender. In 38th place is The ABCs of Beth. In 37th place is Rattlestar Rick Lactica. In 36th place is Child Rick of Mor. In 35th place is Raising Gazorpazorb. In 34th place is The Rickturian Morty Day. In 33rd place is One Crew Over the Crewcoo's Morty. In 32nd place is Pro Mortius. In 31st place is Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate. In 30th place is Anatomy Park. In 29th place is Edge of Tomorty, Rick Die Rick Pete. In 28th place is Something Ricked This Way Comes. In 27th place is Morty's Mind Blowers. In 26th place is Autoerotic Assimilation. In 25th place is The Old Man in the Seat. In 24th place is Never Ricking Morty. In 23rd place is Lawnmower Dog. In 22nd place is The Whirly Durly Conspiracy. In 21st place is Rick's D Minutes. In 20th place is Star Mort Rick Turn of the Jerry. In 19th place is The Pilot. In 18th place is Rick Mancing the Stone. In 17th place is Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. In 16th place is Ricksky Business. In 15th place is Look Who's Purging Now. In 14th place is Rest and Relaxation. In 13th place is Get Swifty. In 12th place is Morty Night Run. In 11th place is M. Night Shyam Aliens. In 10th place is the Vat of Acid episode. In 9th place is Rick Potion number 9. In 8th place is the Rick Shank Rickdemption. In 7th place is the Ricks Must Be Crazy. In 6th place is Wedding Squanchers. In 5th place is A Rickle in Time. In 4th place is Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind. In 3rd place is Me Seeks and Destroy. In 2nd place is Total Rickall. And in 1st place is the Ricklantis Mix-Up. My god, I'm getting tired of saying all those names over again. Thank you guys for watching another retrospective, and if you made it this far, please consider liking and subscribing. What's your guys' opinions on this season? And do you agree or disagree with me? Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.